Well, meeting to order. Ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the April 17th and May 1 meetings.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Moved and second that we approve both of them.
Wait, no, Mark wasn't at the April 17th meeting.
No,
So you can't second it.
right.
I did.
You did?
So we'll need two motions in, right?
Yes, please.
This one's for the April 17th.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
No.
Those approved? Go ahead and vote, please, I'm sorry.
Mr. Spratlin?
Yes.
Mr. Meacher?
Yes.
Mr. Puckett?
Yes.
Now one for May 1.
So moved.
Can I second that one?
Moving second. Any other comments, corrections?
One minor correction, referencing Mr. Crockett not being able to
Right.
do some second
About the non-part.
of this,
Right.
17th. Other than that, none.
Proceed to vote, please.
Mr. Meacher?
Yes.
Mr. Crockett?
Yes.
Mr. Spratlin?
Yes. We need a motion to approve the bills. Payment of $20,581. General is $25.24. Fire is $12,159. Cemetery is $639. EMS billing $25.26. Road and Bridge $27.32. I hear a motion to pay the bills.
So moved.
Moving second. Any other comments or questions? Proceed to vote, please.
Mr. Meacher? Mr. Crockett?
Yes.
Mr. Spratlin?
Yes. Now, what are we going to do? Colin's not here, and he was going to be a part of this discussion.
Well,
Um,
we have one resolution from Colin for National EMS Week that we could,
Get out.
you have, you should have it, I think. Is it the most recent? Yeah, there it is.
We have a resolution from Colin recognizing National EMS Week, whereas the emergency medical service is a vital public service, whereas members of Miami Township Fire Rescue are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate for those who experience illness or injury. Whereas the emergency medical service has grown to fill a gap by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventive medicine, follow-up care, and access to telemedicine. And whereas the members of Miami Township Fire Department, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value of the accomplishments of emergency medical service providers by designating Emergency Medical Service Week now. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby proclaims May 21st through May 27th, 2017 as Emergency Medical Services Week.
Well, as soon as Margaret comes back, she's already assigned a number, but I forgot which number it was, so we'll have to wait for that. What was the number on that resolution? Is it 18?
16.
16.
Mm-hmm.
Resolution 217-16.
I'm sorry, did you guys move in second?
We have already read it
No, we haven't.
and waiting for somebody to approve the resolution.
I will make that motion.
A second.
Move second. Any other discussion?
Not on.
Proceed to vote, please.
Mr. Spratlin?
Yes.
Mr. Crockett?
Yes.
Mr. Meacher?
Yes. I have one additional item under fire. I would make a motion to approve Fiscal Officer Silliman's recommendations for refinancing the previously approved salary restructuring that was proposed by Chief Alden at our last meeting. That's his proposal, and this is how she's
I kind of broke it down.
gonna break it down. and we've already gone through the different funds, and there are sufficient funds in the general fund to cover the salary transfer from fire back to general for actual trustees and fiscal officer, as needed.
Well, yeah, I mean, and when I crunched these numbers, I wasn't even moving any money, the trustees' salaries out of the fire fund. I mean, it was, those were still there, and this is just,
I know, but we don't want to do it on, remember we don't want to do it on using excess funds.
oh.
Because we
Well,
don't know
the only
that,
excess funds, yeah,
that's not a continuing basis.
Right, well, for the year, like I said, I mean, we can still move, trustees' monies, back over to fire, but it's minimal, excess funds that are being used. In 2191, it'd be $1,300 for the year, and $2,500 for the year for EMS billing.
I just think it would be more fiscal responsibility if we made a permanent adjustment in order to reflect a change that allows that additional salary to be made, as opposed to from unencumbered funds.
Are you feeling that we should move 100%, or maybe we could reduce it to 40%?
Just what you need, to cover the 6,000 outstanding, and that would be less than that for the rest of the year, as you've
Right.
said.
And then, can you include in your motion that this pay raise will go into effect, not the pay period we're in right now, but
Right, June 5.
June 5? Is that the next, no, wait, the next pay
Oh,
period
that's
is, I
right.
need a calendar.
Yeah.
I didn't look that up, but,
100.
what's the, what would be the next, what's today? Today's
This is 15th.
15th, and then we get to what's
2
this
weeks
coming
later.
Saturday.
2 weeks later, it's the 29th.
It'll be the 29th.
Right, so 29th, no, that's a Monday, 28th, so starting with the end,
So it's 31st.
the pay periods end on Fridays. The new
Okay.
pay period starts on a Saturday, so whenever the next,
27th.
27th, starting with that pay period.
27th is a Saturday.
Yeah, it ends on a Friday.
That's a
and
week
starts-
from, week from this coming Saturday.
That works, so it'll be the next pay period,
So 27.
27.
Beginning.
Yeah, commencing, yeah.
Okay.
Right, so,
Okay. We need a,
Chris moved.
here a second?
I will second that.
Moving second. That would do that. What you talked about.
I'll put it into words.
Words are good.
Yeah, I'll draw a picture.
Any other discussion about that? Got it in a memo right here, but I don't want to take time to read it. Nobody would remember all those numbers anyway. Proceed to vote, please.
Mr. Sprackett?
Yes.
Mr. Crockett?
Yes.
Mr. Beecher?
Yes. Okay, let's do one more under fiscal officer, which would be the resolution 2017, which would be the resolution certifying to the county auditor the amount of voting property tax to be levied and collected for the purposes of paying debt charges. So we can get that out of the way and move along.
This first one here,
Mhm.
yeah.
Brad, would you mind basically reminding everybody what that purpose is?
Sure. The purpose of that resolution is to start the process of property tax collection. So it was very apparent from the ballot language itself that the tax, in order to pay the debt service on the bonds, would be levied in 2017 for first collection in 2018. This is your direction after a successful election to the county auditor to actually go ahead and do that. And typically they like that done within about 30 days. It's more important if it's a November election. With the May election, obviously you have a little more time, but it's good to do that right away. And what we put in that resolution is that there is some anticipation to issue either bonds or notes in July or the third quarter of this year and then to issue bonds, long-term bonds, sometime next year. But that's their direction to know, an affirmative statement basically from the township to say, go ahead and levy and collect as planned.
Any questions about that?
No.
No, I don't have that resolution.
Here.
I gave you a copy of all
That's
resolutions.
okay.
I have an extra copy if you'd like.
Yeah, here's one, you can, if you wanna,
Could be
use
down-
this one, because we'll do,
Maybe it's on the back. From the.
There you go. We're good. Thank you.
So building a building is harder than it looks.
So I'll move for adoption of resolution 2017-17.
Did I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Moving second, any other discussion? Take a vote, please.
Mr. Crockett,
Yes.
Mr. Mutcher,
Yes.
Mr. Sprackle?
Yes.
I'll get you a clean copy of that, Margaret.
Yep.
Okay. I hate to hold you guys up, but I'm calling, suppose Conley can go. You got anything
I
else?
talked to, yeah, that's what I was talking,
Resolution?
Nope.
Is he out there?
I was, not yet, but he's maybe 5 minutes behind, he's pulling in a tanker, I mean, over there, the fire truck or something. He's gonna show up, but
Yeah.
it's,
I would say let's just wait.
Could we take just a couple of minutes? And obviously, I've had lengthy and fruitful discussions with both you gentlemen, but I'm the only one who has. Would you mind giving us a little bit of background about yourself and your affiliation with Dinsmore and of course, with Evan Payne?
Be glad to. So Brad Rui, I've been with Dinsmore and Scholl for a little bit. I've been practicing for almost 20 years, and our firm Peck Schaefer Williams merged with Dinsmore and Scholl a few years ago. So it's essentially the same firm for the last 20 years. And I specialize in all public finance work. So I work with all municipalities, townships, cities, counties, school districts, and then I work with some hospitals as well, and it's all doing public finance work. And for the most part, placing bond issues on the ballot, placing tax levies on the ballot, and then working with those political subdivisions with governmental entities just like the township to ultimately issue notes and bonds. Some are privately placed, some are publicly placed, but that's pretty much exclusively what I do. And so encounter all kinds of elected officials like yourselves, work with prosecuting attorneys in some cases, and fiscal officers of all sorts. So we get into all kinds of questions and issues, not only in terms of issuing bonds and notes and that sort of thing, but also sometimes questions of proper fund balances, fund transfers, and then sometimes even touch on construction matters as well. So we're here to help get the bonds issued and get your project constructed, and we're really at your service. So very much appreciate the opportunity to be here before you, and we'll be drafting a lot of documents, many of which you may not be aware ever existed, and some of them are necessary for state law purposes, and a lot of them are necessary for federal tax purposes. But the ultimate benefit at the end of the day is that you get to issue tax-exempt bonds and notes, and that simply means that the interest on those bonds and notes is excludable from gross income. So a purchaser and owner of those bonds gets to exclude those on their income tax purposes, and that provides them with a benefit. Ultimately, they provide you with a lower interest rate as opposed to what you might think of as a traditional commercial taxable loan if you walk down to your bank, so to speak. So this process ultimately saves taxpayers money.
Are those bonds available to local people?
I will let Andy answer that question. Some of it depends on how they're marketed and sold.
True.
Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not.
So we work side by side with Bond Council, and my name's Andy Burris. I've been doing this same time as Brad's, about 19 years in the business. Been with a few different broker dealers over time, and now with Bradley Payne Advisors, strictly in the municipal advisory side. And our role working with Brad is, number one, to help you find the right option that fits what your goals may be in terms of getting the project financed. We are not tied to a product. That's simply trying to find the best avenue, the cheapest method, and the least, I would say, cumbersome to you as you go through the process. Not only now, but also down the road in terms of what you may have to do for other individuals, other elected officials as they come down 15, 10 years down the road, as they have to deal with this issue that will be out there for 30 years. So as we sit down with you and hear your staffing levels, what options are out there, given you mentioned bonds, private placements are all the rage now in the market, 1-year notes or even federal loan programs. So we filter all that out to try to find the best fit for you as an organization to get you your money to your project. So
You don't know if they'll be available to local people?
well, they can be.
I mean, I don't know, it just seemed to me like people around town might be.
Yeah. It's two things. If we go through the process and find out that one of the things we talked about before, and Brad and I have had a quick conversation regarding is maybe the possibility of using USDA, and that's a loan program that gets you very low interest rates without having to do a whole lot of disclosure work and bond offer documents and writing presentations.
USDA, that's Department of Agriculture.
That's right. They have loan programs through their office, their administration, that provide cheap financing for mainly rural areas to help you finance your project. So that's one option. We've had a few conversations with them regarding it. The second option would be to do either look at a bank placement or a traditional bond issue. Now, a traditional bond issue would be have the option for local residents to possibly invest in that, depending on who the underwriter selected would be and their ability to distribute bonds locally.
I had no idea the U.S. Department of Agriculture lent money for it. Buildings like that.
Pretty impressive low rates too. They're willing to do 30 years fixed rate at the current rate of 3.6%.
So qualified,
What are the chances of getting that?
Well, we've got to flush a few more things out. They sent me the application today, and so we'll fill that out and send it back to them. It's just a preliminary discussion if it would, as they go through their process, they'll take a look at the issue to see if it would fit for you.
Now, financed by the USDA is municipal bonds.
Correct. It's really the driving force there is a couple things. Interest rate, the ability to lock in a 30-year rate at a rate you probably cannot get in the market.
3.6%.
That's right. And then two, the cost of issuance. And then finally, most importantly, is a world we've been dealing with a lot lately, is continuing disclosure and the impacts we have to do on an ongoing basis, whether it's to the investors or to the rating agencies, should you do a traditional bond issue. So those are the things that we start to filter through to see what would be the best fit for your organization.
So that's not really, I mean, the entire amount would come from one organization as opposed to selling bonds.
True.
Individuals.
And one of the other things we've discussed is the possibility of doing short-term financing, issuing a 1-year note that would be placed out in the market. Very simple to do, very easy, fast process in order for you to get your cash in hand. So you need to get money going to start the project. So that's another form of financing that's often utilized. Did I miss anything there?
I think you
No,
covered the
all right.
bases. Yep.
Could you touch a little on a timeline of what we're looking at for the next 9 to 12 months in what we need, what we will probably be advised to do? I mean, I think I'm talking about bond anticipation notes, because my understanding is we can't do anything until we get some certification of some sort that we can sign contracts and spend money. So we don't want to sit and wait for wait for the county auditor. This is Chief Ullman, Brad Brewery, and Andy Brostart. Brad is our bond counsel.
Okay.
Andy is our municipal or financial advisor. And we're basically getting into the nuts and bolts of the sorts of things that we're going to have to do in the short term. The first sorts of steps that we need to take. We've taken a step of adopting a resolution directing the county auditor to begin collecting these taxes that the voters approved when first available, and then to distribute them to us again first available time. So we haven't really talked about personally anything else other than.
I think one of the points you brought up, Chris, is a really good starting point, and that is you have to have the funds available or in the process of collection in order to sign your construction contract. And I know that process you're probably just getting underway, but whenever you get to the conclusion of that process and you're ready to sign that contract, whether it be in the next few weeks or it may take a month or two to negotiate that contract, you're going to have those funds available in order to certify. I think as we talked about, there's not enough unencumbered cash just sitting around to account for the entire amount of bond issue. And so what that means is that you're going to want the funds sooner rather than later. And one of the options that Andy mentioned, going through USDA, that can be, not always, but it can be sometimes a lengthy process just because it's the federal government and they have lots of forms and boxes to check. So at least historically, that has not always been something that you can get through that process within, say, a few weeks or even a couple months in a lot of cases. So I think what you're alluding to is, does it make sense to consider short-term note issue, we would call bond anticipation notes, those securities or loans which mature within a year or less, as opposed to bonds, which would be more than a year. And so does it make sense so that you can sign your construction contract, you can start digging, you can start getting the building out of the ground, everybody can move forward, and then ultimately your notes will mature whatever, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, whatever it may be, when we get an indication if it's USDA, if you go in that direction, then we take those notes out with longer term obligations. But even if you don't go the USDA route, as Andy will pick up from where I leave off here in a minute, if you go into the capital markets or if you go into a private placement, getting a 30-year private placement we've talked about can be very challenging. There are very few buyers, if any, out there willing, banks, financial institutions, other investors that are really willing to purchase a 30-year fixed rate obligation today. So that can be challenging, but even if you do that or go into the capital markets and do more of a traditional bond issue where you could sell to local investors, that can take some time to get that up to speed. And so each of those processes have either credit or underwriting considerations or perhaps disclosure obligations, what we call an official statement that gets sent to all investors. It takes a lot of time to collect that information, perhaps even if you're talking about a rating. So any of the options that Andy touched on take some time, the long-term bond options. So good starting point is, do we want to consider bond anticipation notes? Andy, you I'm sure can add a lot more flavor to all that.
That's a very quick and easy financing to get done in the marketplace, especially for a voted bond issue. The process that we use is what they utilize the Ohio Municipal Advisory Council, and they give an OMAC report. And that is usually enough with investors, along with a copy of your most recent financials, maybe a copy of your 16 fund balance position to get investors comfortable, especially in this situation when it's a voted scenario. That process from when, after the election certified, let's just assume, end of May.
Roughly 30 days for that process.
Yeah,
the 21-day canvas period and then a 15-day contest period, roughly 30.
So working in line with that, it's as quick as the fact that you could have a resolution passed, say early June, and money before 4th of July. There's typically about a 2-week window from when the notes are priced to when the closing is set, so that Brad can get the legal documents taken care of, out here for you to sign, and then back to the appropriate places so we can have the closing.
I think Brad and I touched on it, you know, and I just need to clear it up, you know, between now and, let's say, September or January, depending upon when we get the first issuance of the levy money, I guess October and February, whatever it is. But would we necessarily need to put the whole 5.7 million out in a short-term note? I mean, we're not gonna be spending it all. I mean, we may be committing to it. Maybe we need have that money in the bank in order to commit to a contractor, but you're not paying them up front.
Well, you do, in order to, so if your construction contract is for the full 5.7 plus, it is necessary to have those funds on hand
Oh,
for
it
the
is?
process
Okay.
of collection.
Yeah.
And simply having the vote out there is not enough.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so from that standpoint, it is necessary, even though you're not going to be drawing on that. Now, there are
Right.
different products that make those monies potentially available to you, and other ones that just say, here it all is.
Mhm.
So it's kind of the difference between having all the cash on hand in your bank account or having the ability to what we call like a draw note.
Mhm.
And so, you know, on a note, Andy, I don't know how willing purchasers are to do that on a draw kind of basis. My guess is if they're committing funds, they're gonna want interest on the full amount, but.
Yeah, and I mean, you're also gonna see changes in the market coming up for the next, at least the rest of the year, especially with 2 more rate hikes, so that
Mhm.
does impact, that discussion as well.
Mhm.
When is, have you pinpointed when your funds are gonna be needed yet? When is the bulk of it? I mean, construction isn't gonna happen until, much of next year?
We've just put out advertised requests for qualifications for architects.
Okay.
Do you recall what was that a 30-day? I mean,
I
is
believe
it
they
2
have-
weeks, 2 weeks to respond and then 2 weeks to submit or for us to consider?
Off the top of my head, I think it's 20 days to respond,
Uh-huh.
and then we have 20 days, or you have 20 days
Mhm.
to do your
So
thing.
that request is gonna be in this week's coming paper and
This was
following.
paper and following,
Mhm.
so, yeah, I mean, the architect award won't be till mid-June, if
Yeah.
anything.
And
June-
at that point, I have
end
no
of June.
idea how long it takes for an architect to say, okay, here's the whole package, put it out for bid.
Right.
God, for all I know, it's
Their estimate
2020.
was 5 to 6 months
Oh, is that right?
to do the design,
Yeah.
to get the approvals from our end,
Mhm.
and then to get all the permitting process in place before they can begin.
Okay.
Well, I guess before we can begin.
Yeah, so we
Yeah,
probably
for
couldn't start
GC.
digging until 2018. I don't think we could turn it around.
Sounds like it'd be late in 17, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I thought we could possibly get this year is some initial site prep,
Yeah.
which hopefully isn't that expensive.
So, yeah, so there really is not, you know, a whole lot of sense in having the short-term issue done prior to when you really need it. And so if the thought is that the architect's gonna be on board by mid-June, and that's gonna take some time to get those plans substantially complete, you may not be talking about earnest negotiations on a construction contract until sometime in the fall.
Right.
And maybe not completing that until late fall, early winter.
Yeah.
So there may not really be a need for this, you know, to issue the bonds in the next few months, if that's where you're at in the
So
process.
if you go with US Department of Agriculture, it's gonna take some time. That would all work well.
It's possible that we could
It could,
forego,
yeah.
yeah, the short term.
I'm in no hurry to do this. You know, this is all new to us. We don't- we don't-
Now, you have the land, right? Is it this site, or is it?
No.
Okay,
But we own the land.
yeah, okay.
Well, we're in a hurry in as much as, you know, the clock's ticking on interest rates and inflation, construction costs, and all those sorts of things that we don't want to put off too far. From experience, do you know how much money we would need? I mean, we sign with an architect, if we've got no money in the bank, are they gonna accept that? Are they gonna do work for 6 months without, I mean, zero payment?
Well, a couple things for consideration. One is getting a reimbursement resolution together sooner rather than later. Under federal tax rules, if you start to pay out bills, you can only reimburse yourself from the proceeds of the bonds if you have a reimbursement resolution in place. So we'll want to get that moving relatively soon so you have the ability to do that. Secondly, in my experience, most of the architects and engineers are willing to negotiate and to start work understanding that their fees may be paid. Now, how long they will forego payment, whether that's 2, 3, 6 months, I think that's probably up to the negotiating team here.
We're not that good.
Could they, they could split the issue up too, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so maybe you just issue them, I'm making numbers of $1.5 million to take care of whatever you need to take care of in the first 6 months, and then take care of the balance later on. So at least you've got funds on hand, unless you didn't want to use other pots to help pay for the architect's costs. You could do a small borrowing.
Can you make a commitment for the entire amount at a certain rate, and then just take it as you, like you say, take $1 million first, and a year from now, get the rest of it? So you have to, can you lock in a rate and do that?
Well, what we're talking all about right now are short-term financings, structures. So any of those items would be taken out either from a long-term issue, most likely not until next year. One of the things that Brad brought up is interesting. A lot of banks have come up with withdrawal type structures so that they would say, hey, we'll approve you for $1 million or $2 million or even $5 million. And then your rate is X, and you can take it down as you need it. Does that answer your question?
So you only pay interest on
what you
pay
take
as
down?
you use it.
That's correct.
I think
What about
one
the
of
big lump at the end of the year or something? When we pay the contractor is millions, whatever it turns out to be.
The construction contractor?
Yeah.
I think the concept would be to get you out of the short-term product as soon as you could, so that you lock in the low rates. So you wouldn't go through the whole construction cycle with the contractor. How long is it going to take? A year and a half, maybe 2 years, something like that nature. If that takes that long, then you'd rather want to take out your short-term structure with something long-term much sooner than that, given what the interest rate environment may look like at this point in time.
You convinced interest rates are going to go up?
I have my days.
Is the USDA, is that loan a short-term loan?
That's long-term.
Long-term.
So they'll go up as long as 30 years.
they're one of the few providers of sort of single purchasers in providing a fixed rate in return for such a long period of time.
Cool.
And I know we've talked a lot about USDA. I think we're going to know in short order if this qualifies or not, and we can get back to you and say, listen, we got to switch gears. It's not going to qualify, or we will. And then discuss the implications of either method.
And you may want to address the point that, so if you do a draw and on a short-term basis, it may be challenging for some financial institutions to do that without sort of an upcharge to that, because they have to reserve that ability to draw against their capital requirements. So it's going to cost. Where you see the draw feature probably more often than not is on long-term obligations. So a bank says, let's do a 10-year financing, first 18 months or 2 years, whatever. We know that's going to be construction, but at some certain point, 18 months, 2 years, whatever, you must draw all of this. You know, we are going to get our money, but they're willing to do that because they know that they've got you for 10 years or 15 years. On a 1 year or less, there's probably, if you do the draw method, I mean, they're probably not going to just give you the benefit of reserving $5.7 million against their capital requirements and allowing you to draw down $250,000 and pay them interest on.
So it's not cost effective, is what you're saying.
Well, I don't know about not cost effective, but I just want to say that on draw schedule, you see those more on long-term obligations. I mean, Andy, tell me if you.
No, but we'd have to see, what institutions would be interested in doing it for a year period. Because like Brad mentioned, you wouldn't want to be out there for 10 years with a product like that. In our discussions, I think the goals here are lock in a low rate as quickly and cost effective as you can. And what method would be, not so much of a hindrance on future administrations and folks having to deal with the requirements that are out there these days related to security law.
Would you be kind enough to go through just the basics of the traditional methods that we may be looking at, the private, the public?
So on the note side, first, what has historically been done is for example, we talked about the 1 year note structure, or it can be anything less, 9, 6 months. We've done shorter than that. But that method is really, you're going out and you're utilizing the Ohio Municipal Advisory Council little sheet that just kind of describes the district and the township and goes demographics, those types of items, so that the investor can get a feel for where you're at, what the demographics look like, and then it also talks about the legal security. It's going to pay back the note when it's converted to a bond. So that structure utilized, and it goes in. It's typically short-term investors, money market funds that are going to invest in that product. The other options that we have, which is the traditional bond issue. And so bonds can go anywhere from 2 years to 4 years. And the document that's utilized to sell that in the market is what they call a preliminary official statement. It can be a thick document depending on how much information we put into it. But again, it talks about the location, the demographics, the financial history, your collection history, that kind of stuff, and information relative to give the investor a feel for, again, should they want to invest in this security. The fact, and again, and all this goes to the fact that it's a voted bond issue is a much safer security than if you were issuing an unvoted issue paying it out of your general resources. So that obviously is a huge benefit. Bonds can be sold to any kind of different investors, especially when you're looking at a 30-year time frame. So you'll have retail, you'll have money market managers, you'll have, this will be considered bank qualified, so you'll get a benefit from the banks who invest in the issue. Trust departments, and then on the long end, you see some retail and insurance companies come in to buy that debt. So you're going to really see a wide array of different investors looking at your paper. That's locked in for 30 years, so you don't ever want to touch it, which is the nice thing about it. There's a 10-year, typical 10-year call protection that if you wanted to refinance, if rates go lower, it's there for you. Or should you sell the building or whatever, you want to get out of financing and pay it off. You always want to have the ability to make sure you either refinance or to pay off the structure. The process with bonds is that since the crisis, you need to get a rating. And going through that process, we help you work through that, make the phone call, talk to the analyst on the phone, and they assign a credit scale based upon what they see with your financials and the demographics, really in this case, of the community. That rating scale is used for investors to then gauge whether they want to invest in the bond issue. So it's going forward, you always have to keep that rating up too. So not sure if you're familiar with what happened with Miami Township over in Montgomery County. They had their rating pulled from them, and it was a bad thing in the market. So investors, some funds, because they couldn't hold paper in their portfolio that wasn't rated, had to liquidate their position in the secondary market and took losses. It was a really bad thing for them. And that just simply happened because they didn't get financials done in time, which I talked about a little bit as well. I don't bore everybody with you, but the fact that you're on a 2-year audit cycle was another kind of factor that we thought, yeah, maybe we shouldn't look at the bond issue market because Moody's doesn't look too favorably to buying new audits. It's just the nature of the beast that we live in these days. They used to be, but not anymore.
How does the audit affect?
The fact that it's done every 2 years and not every year. even though you're allowed by state law to only go every other year. It's investors, you know, in today's, since the crisis, want to see up-to-date audits on a regular basis.
And we
So,
have a choice.
what choice would you like?
Yeah,
Well,
we have a choice.
Well, if we wanted to be audited every year, we could, hire someone privately to do
Yeah,
the
but
years
can
that
you-
the state doesn't do it.
Can you save enough interest to pay for the audit?
I wouldn't let that be your driving factor. I mean, because, again, we have other options, the USDA program. And I'll be honest with you, I think this is the first time in my 19 years I've faced USDA. But because of what we're seeing related to Moody's wanting annual audits, continuing disclosure requirements that are an extra cost to you every year, it just seemed like it made a good fit as an option out here. Not that that's the way you're gonna go, but just as an option to explore going down the pathway.
Have you ever done one?
Well, I have, coming back from what we've done typically is issued notes, mainly for water sewer issues. And then they're taken out from USDA afterwards.
Yeah, they're very active in the water sewer, rural water sewer
Yeah.
projects.
So the bond issue, once we get all that packaged up, there are some ways that you can do, if you don't get the rating you want, but buy insurance to make your rate better. You're really kind of borrowing their credit rating from the insurance company. A lot of that unraveled in 08, 09, when they were all AAA, surprised they were holding all kinds of bad stuff in their balance sheet. When that's all done and complete, the process is about 2 hours when we would help you select an underwriter. And that underwriter comes in and actually places or sells the bonds in the market to investors. They could put an ad here locally and say, hey, folks, I'm not sure what banks are here, but let's just say Key or PNC or Fifth Third. They all have retail arms that they can sell locally if that's an option that we want to go after as well. But the process is about 2 hours. And after 2 hours, there's an order period. We re-up what we call the order pad to see how many bonds have been sold, where we're short, where we have too many orders, and we do an adjustment on interest rates with the underwriter, and then that usually seals the deal. If there's any balances left, the underwriter has to take them down. I mean, if nothing was sold, in the severe case that nothing sold, in the true nature of a negotiated underwriting, the underwriter has to take down those bonds at the rate that we agree to.
Will these bonds be sold to one investor or multiple?
There'll be multiple investors. Typically, on a deal size of this nature, you may see 20 different investors come in.
20 different for 5
Could be, yeah. I mean, if you get some retail interest, you can see some folks come in and have that many investors.
Now, do you do all of this paperwork and
That's why you hired us.
with options or?
That's why you hired ST Fund guys. Yeah, that's what we come back with you to give you the options of what makes them the best sense relative, not only to the short-term piece. It doesn't sound like you guys need $5 million, but we have some more discussion about that up front. But what's the best option to get you some short-term money, how much you need, and then the long-term takeouts. That'll be a discussion that we'll come back and have another round with you. The last option, and Brad was right to point this out. Since 08 and 09, back, you never saw banks get interested in municipality debt. In my opinion, some of them just didn't understand the credit because they had commercial loan guys trying to understand municipal credit, and it was just not working. To the term. They didn't want to go past a certain time frame. I think back in the day, maybe 8, 9, 10 years was the most they would do. When the crash hit, you saw all kinds of crazy stuff happen after that. You saw some banks going 30 years, fixed rate debt. A lot of them have pulled back now, and it's are in the 15-year range. So, but it's a very active market now. The banks have gotten much more aggressive at looking at this type of paper as an option. But again, here, the fact that they're looking at 15 years probably is their max. They were 20, and then recently, I think, when they see rates coming, an increase, they don't want to have their portfolio at risk, so I think they're dialing back to 15 years now. But, so those are really the options that you have before you. I think I'm a simplistic kind of guy, and what makes the easiest sense for you to do and the most cost effective, I think, looking at trying to pinpoint what you need for the next 6 months in terms of cash flow. And I know it's kind of hard, but if you think that contract's $500,000, maybe You borrow $750, and get you through that period, and then you take the rest of it out later.
The FDA or USDA will put it out in parcels like that?
No, they'll take it down, and, well, what the goal would be to do is when, you know, we don't want to drive Brad crazy, I think, you would just take the USDA down one chunk. And it just, you really don't want to do it in separate pieces, you just say, no, we need $5 million, you know, $5.7 million, here's your money.
So where is that money? Can we put in the bank and get interest on it, or?
You can,
I know,
but,
you can try,
he's
but.
probably laughing behind me. Back in the day, when I first got into business, you could borrow short-term rates at 2% and reinvest it at 3.5 or 4 on the taxable side. Now, the IRS doesn't really like that, so there's rules and regulations against you doing that. That spread today isn't there anymore, so the benefit of trying to get some extra, you know, interest income into your coffers doesn't really work as well anymore.
Oh, I know. But we're gonna have, if we did that, we'd have 5 million sitting there in the bank, right?
There would be a netting effect, essentially. You would be earning hardly anything, but let's just call it 50 basis points, and then you would be paying out on a short-term rate, just throwing a number out here,
1.5 or something.
okay, 1.5. So you would net that, and that would be your true interest rate.
Does the US government insure any of these bonds, the people that are buying them, like the USDA, I guess is the US government?
Right, and that's more of a loan program instead of a bond. So they're just making you a loan on the basis of what is the security towards the issue, and they'll see that it's a voted levy if you're collecting the millage required to pay it back.
If you do get that, we're gonna be paying, if the rate is, say, the same, 3.6 on the money that's just sitting there in the bank for some period of time, maybe a year.
Yeah.
But it might be paying 4.5%. So, yeah.
Well, that's what Amy's job is to explore all those different possibilities and present them to us as what he advises us method to take at any particular time. Because obviously markets change and you know, opportunities, so you know what's good in 2 weeks might not be good in 2 months.
Well, I mean, you bring up a great point. I think Brad and I in our career have seen a lot of crazy things happen, unfortunately. I mean, you've got a lot of geopolitical risk too happening overseas that, you know, right now maybe what I'm telling you could be completely out the door in 2 months, you know, unfortunately. But it changes, and that's what we're here to keep our ears to the floor to hear what's going on and come back with some different options as we go through this process. But
You get the USDA, how long? It's gonna take a few months probably to get that.
yeah, I mean, I don't think you guys need the money right now, number one. But I think
That's what I mean.
yeah.
If you can get the cheap interest, or cheaper maybe, who's in a hurry? 30 years. We're going to take time to get the architect anyway, and the contractor, it's going to take time anyway.
Right.
Probably more time than we think. Most of those things go that way. But,
And we also want to time that up right so that you have the ability to legally certify you have the funds to pay the contractors, as Brett mentioned before.
So how soon do you think you'll know on the USDA?
As soon as I can fill that application out. So we'll get it back to them and see how fast they turn it around.
So,
but see, you know, who knows how long it's going to take to get it back.
Yeah, right. They're a little more aggressive than they have been in the past because I think they're a little concerned. When I ran into one of the gentlemen up at the county commissioner conference, they were dying to make loans because they want to show that it's an active, good organization that's not going to get cut with this new administration. I think that's not a concern.
You think the USDA may get their funds cut from?
I wouldn't bet against anything happening right now. So
No, but you're in the know more than.
I would tell you this. I
More
think
than we are.
I haven't heard anything of the such. I'm not sure if you've heard
I haven't
anything,
either,
but
no.
you know, as they start to go through, you know, a lot of it might filter out through the tax discussion, the reform discussion there. You know, where do you make up money? Do you consider this to be a loss loser? You know, I don't really see it that way. You know, if they're borrowing a treasury rate, it's really what they're doing, and they're just kind of marking it up a little bit and passing it on to you. That's the essence of their game, right? So I can't see how it's a money loser to them, unless you have a bunch of defaults happening. And they've been much riskier credits than what this would be, in terms of, you know, water and sewer type facilities, which typically were designed, this whole program was to give those types of facilities out and, you know, distressed areas the ability to issue get financing.
Let's say we want to contract with we want to contract with an architect July 1, and we are lucky enough to want to contract with a contractor January 1.
Mm-hmm.
We're still not going to receive probably first dollar on the tax money till April 18. So what do you see now as to when we should start this anticipation note process, and then for how much if we've got to go to April of 18?
Well, I think anything you do, we're going to make sure we time it up past that first collection, so that you have money there to pay for interest.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, worst case scenario, the auditor's office delays 2 months for some reason to get their settlement out.
Yeah.
And we have a note that's coming due. You can always capitalize the interest in the next note, so you can borrow the interest into the next issue.
Mm-hmm.
Something we really don't want to do, but it's something that we can make sure it's available.
I completely agree, by the way. Yeah, just to get past that technical collection date. You never know when there's going to be a delay, or there's just going to be not enough in collections to give you your anticipated amount, and you either have to do an advance or you have to roll the note again. You don't want to be in that situation.
I'm just trying to get a firm grasp on, you know, do we need a anticipation note for 750,000 or 2.5 or what? We're certainly not going to do it twice, you know, for the cost of these things.
Yeah, I mean, you know, my advice would be to at least do it for $750,000, or maybe $800,000. But there's in the case that USDA comes back and says, hey, you guys don't qualify, and we have to go to the traditional markets. If you're below $5 million in new money in a year, you become a small issuer exemption.
Yeah.
Right? And so, right now you're $750, and that would put you over. And then that just exempts you out of arbitrage rebate, all those types of fun things that we still do back in the day when you could invest higher and earn extra money over your borrowing rate. So my thought there is, when you split those two up, then when you come bring them back together, they would still be considered small issuer, or would they still?
As long as you're refunding the one, so if you said 750, yeah, you'd
So
be okay.
So when we put them back together for the long-term borrowing issue, you're still okay under the small issuer exemption. I mean, I'm not telling you to waste money here, but quite frankly, $800,000 being derived from a property tax collection, the delta there isn't going to be something that's going to break the bank or be up for question. But I think it would benefit you in case you do have to go to the capital markets route to stay away from that IRS classification.
So should the amount we need be determined to some extent by the architect's bid? Because they're going to charge us a certain amount, and that would have to be paid, at least part of it would be before the contractor. So,
In terms of the cost component, you're
yeah,
saying
to
$800,000.
determine how much money we need when.
I hear you.
We need to know
Yeah.
what the architect's cost is going to be, because that's going to be the big one, first big one, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, I would tell you
You're
that.
going to be the first. You guys are going to be the first big one.
No, I think we're last. And you can jump in here, but predominantly the voted bond deals that are done in the state are done by school districts. And they typically, instead of trying to phase it in, issue it, boom, done, because the tax levy's coming in to pay for it, not out of the general fund. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, I'm not saying you're not wasting money, I mean, you may be wasting some money, you may be saving some money, depending on where interest rates go. You can always hindsight and look and see what was the best method, but, you know, I think, again, going back to, I'm not sure what that's gonna cost you to do that preliminary point, but to get you out of that small issuer exemption might be a benefit. I don't know, it's, maybe not, maybe it's.
Yeah, I'm not sure that, it's, a lot of it will just depend on what your construction schedule is. I think what Andy's referring to is you get an exemption as a small issuer for arbitrage rebate purposes. So arbitrage rebate is your, the interest that you're earning on your proceeds that are sitting there from the notes or the bonds. So let's just go back to what I was saying, the 50 basis points before, 0.5%. That amount, you cannot be earning more than what your, we'll call it interest rate, it's technically your bond yield, but let's just say it's your 3.46%, what we've been throwing around here. So you can't invest at a higher rate than what you're paying out on your bonds. And if you do, you can, but if you do, you have to rebate the difference. What Amy's talking about is you get around that. You don't have to worry about doing that. And it can be, so you're not going to arbitrage. That's one of the benefits. The other is if your construction schedule, an exception to that is if your construction schedule fits within a 2-year construction schedule and you hit defined points in time, 15% after the first 6 months, 45% after the first year, 75% after 18 months, and 100% after 2 years. You're also exempted from arbitrage rebate requirements. You know, there can be some benefit to that, but again, you're probably not going to earn enough for that to make a real difference. So it's, you know, it's something to consider, I think. But again, I'm not sure if that, you know, if that necessarily needs to be the driver behind it. I don't know. That's probably something for us to consider. I'm just trying to think of another benefit for small issuer. You get out a rebate. And you know, then we're obviously going to be under the 10 million bank qualified full time. So,
Other than sit back and relax, is there anything that you feel we should be doing in the short term?
you know, I think we should be in contact as you're getting your bids in and you're seeing what your architect's going to come back with, and ultimately, you know, what they're recommending for a construction schedule. But I think Andy's got the first steps down pat. Absolutely. Let's see what USDA has to say. The other part of the whole, just, you know, which direction do you go, which of the 3 options, it becomes difficult, I think, to quantify some of the time and effort that goes into a capital markets bond issue, where Andy was talking about going to the rating agencies and preparing the official statement. With that, there is a follow-up. Andy alluded to it, it's continuing disclosure. Not a big deal. We generally do that for you. We do charge an annual fee for our clients to do that, anywhere from $500 to $1,000, depending on how complicated. In your case, you're under $10 million. Really, all that means is just providing an audit to the marketplace once a year. In those cases, the charge is like maybe $100 to remember to do that sort of thing. So, but there is this process that you have to do on an annual basis for 30 years, for as long as your bonds are outstanding. There's that, and then there's this whole upfront time of getting an official statement. It's hard to quantify that when you look at, if you're just comparing rates, that doesn't necessarily factor in. So, you know, something for you all, I think, to consider as part of these processes is, you know, do you want to have the mindset of saying, we're going for that lowest interest rate, you know, at all costs, and let's keep these 3 side by side and look at where interest rates are, and the cost of capital, the human cost of going into some of this, we're just going to set that aside. We don't care about that. We'll do what it takes. Some have that mindset. Others say, you know what, administratively, let's do what's simple and easiest. And, you know, that would lean them more towards a USDA side of things. And you may still be getting a great rate on a comparative basis with that. Over 30 years, you know, if we are talking like 343, that's an awesome rate. I mean, just from what I've seen in the marketplace.
360.
360.
340.
Sorry, I don't want to plant the wrong seed there.
Yeah, because we've seen some projections going out, right, that were in the
could see 5%.
3.5 to 5, you know, out.
Absolutely. As you get to 20,
Right.
25, 30 years, absolutely.
Yeah.
So obviously, monitoring the whole rate's important, but just, I think, consider the mindset from an administrative standpoint, kind of which side you want to be on. You know, do you want to be, hey, we'll put the time and effort in, we might have to go through this rating process, and I don't know what you think about the rating, if that would mean an actual trip, or if they could just do it by conference call.
Yeah, I'm really reluctant to advise to go that route. I think you'd be better off not doing a rating and looking at bond insurance and paying for that instead of getting your rating ripped away from you in the future and having a bunch of investors upset with you. Because the audit wasn't done in time. And I'm not even sure, quite frankly, I don't think Moody's would audit you having a 2-year audit cycle. My gut tells me after what I've seen in the last couple of years, I would stay away from that. And I'm not saying this is a reason why you switch from a 2-year audit cycle to an annual audit cycle. We've talked when I first came up here, I'm not sure what other bond issues you're going to be doing down the road. And that's a factor of why we've had a lot of townships switch over from a 2-year audit to a 1-year audit cycle, but they're in the market every other year.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little different story.
We're going to be in the market really.
And so I just don't think that that's the driver. But I mean, if the capital markets route does end up being the way we have to go, you know, my gut tells me to stay away from the rating and just take a little bit of a lump in the market with just having an insurance backing deal, and go on. But that could change. But that's kind of the way I see it today.
So what steps do we take? What do we do now? What steps?
Well,
Do we engage your,
Yeah, there you go, you engage him. Oh, excuse me, you engage him.
I did bring resolutions,
I have, that's what I have.
Okay, we don't mean to spring anything on you, but I just did prepare them. If you wanted to make the formal engagements of Bradley Payne as your financial advisor and us, Dinsmore, as your bond counsel, I do have resolutions, prepared for that, but from my standpoint, that doesn't have to happen tonight. We're going to keep working.
Same with that too.
Well, we already have resolutions and resolution numbers, and let's do it. Let's open it up to, Laura, you have any more questions or concerns for either of the gentlemen?
And you won't get a bill from, I can only speak for myself, you won't get a bill from me, and Andy doesn't operate that, but I don't want to speak for him, but you won't, we bill when it closes, that's, you won't get something next month.
when what closes?
The financing.
Or financing, so if you
So
do
when we
notes.
have our 5 million, then we pay you.
If you do notes, we would typically get paid when the notes are done, and then when the bonds, but the fees and rates are they're based on a standard schedule that we work with all municipalities on, so we don't distinguish and say, oh, we're working in the township, okay. It's schools, counties, municipalities. We use a fee schedule, we negotiate it, we tell you what it is. You don't like it, you say that, I talked to somebody over here, they said that's ridiculous. Let's talk, I've never run into a problem when it comes into fees.
So, what are the fees?
So typically for us, they're based on the two primary things, the principal amount and the duration. And the point is that at the end of all of this, we give an opinion which talks about the validity of the bonds from a state law standpoint, and it talks about the interest component being exempt from a federal tax component. The longer they're out there and the higher the principal amount, the more risk there is on us. Now, we don't see any risk, and we rarely have any problems with these kind of things, but the IRS does, engage in audits on, sort of a random basis. And I've never had an audit problem ever in 20 years, but, knock on wood, it can always happen. But that's how we base our fees on. I'm just gonna give you sort of a rough ballpark so you have something in your head, but quite frankly, I don't have my fee schedule, right at my fingertips. But for something like this, if we did a note issue, for the full 5.7, we'd probably be in the ballpark of maybe 15,000, 20,000, something like that. And then for the long-term bond issue, probably something closer to somewhere, I'm going to say between 30,000 and 40,000. I'm just ballparking, just guessing, but just to give you some gauge of fees. And of course, if we just did a bond issue, then it would just be that latter number.
So how are those fees determined? I mean, there are those that would say you shouldn't sign a contract if you don't know how much the fee is?
Oh, well, what's before you is a resolution, and that resolution allows you to enter into, authorizes you to enter into an engagement letter. So we would present you after that resolution with an engagement letter to your liking or negotiation, however you'd like to. But I'm glad, glad to share. We usually ask to, keep things confidential, but I'm glad to share a fee schedule with you. And, we can certainly have discussions around it. But the resolution does not obligate you, it authorizes you to enter into an engagement letter.
And we can decide not to do it at all.
Absolutely. You can walk away at any moment.
Good.
Yeah.
This is designating Bradley Payne advisors.
We have one for each.
I'll say.
2017-18 is the next one numerically. That's the bond attorney.
The bond attorney is 18,
Correct.
and the investment is 19? Is that what you have?
Yeah, and then the
This is
municipal
the-
advisor is 19.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right,
The attorney is 18.
that's correct.
You can switch them up.
And the advisor is
19.
19.
All right. So I would,
Do you really don't want to read all of this particularly?
No,
nah.
Okay, good.
it's available to the public if they wish.
Okay.
I'm going to move to adopt resolution 2017, or 2017-18.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Move and second, we adopt resolution 2017-18. Any other discussion?
No.
Proceed to vote, please.
Mr. Crockett?
Yes.
Mr. Sprackling?
Yes.
Mr. Mucher?
Yes. I now also move to adopt resolution 2017-19. Continue relationship with Bradley Payne Investment Council.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion?
I have none.
These are all to be signed by the treasurer.
I'll clean those up.
Proceed to vote, please.
Mr. Crockett?
Yes.
Mr. Mucher?
Yes.
Mr. Sprackling?
Yes.
All right. Any other questions for these gentlemen? Colin?
We'll be back.
Margaret?
Oh, nope.
Mark?
I'm sure they'll,
What?
it's not
I just, I guess, just to review just a bit, you're going to try for the USDA first, is that?
We're gonna see, we wanna see if you qualify first. Not that you're gonna do it,
But that will be your first,
And then we'll wait to hear from you as to when you actually need some funds for the, your preliminary money. And if you don't wanna cover that at other resources, then we'll come back and talk about a short-term note financing. We'll get that.
where would that come from?
That would be a capital market sale. So we would place that out, it would go to the money market fund, most likely buying that opportunity for you.
These will be municipal bonds, federal tax exempt, what about the local, state,
Yep.
school?
State, tax exempt as well.
Totally tax exempt, that's right, right?
They call them triple tax exempt. If you live in Ohio.
Okay. That'd be good. I mean, but, maybe you don't, I'm sure you don't really know, but what could an investor, they're gonna cost us 3.6. What might an investor get if they buy these bonds?
I'm not following you.
They get the rate of 3.6.
They get the 3.6.
That's correct.
Okay.
And really, they're gonna do that calculation to see, you know, what tax bracket they're in, what their benefits and to do that or not. And again, a lot of this is up for discussion right now because we've got this happening at the federal level. Which is,
USDA, he's gonna,
USDA doesn't care about the tax exempt status.
they're gonna charge 3.6.
They do it based upon their cost of funds.
3.6, and then whoever buys them gets 3.6.
They're doing a
There'll
loan.
be a middleman.
No, not for the feds.
There's two different things.
Yeah.
One's a loan and the other's a bond. We're talking about two different things.
So the feds goes out and they sell a 30-year security, boom, they fund it that way. They make a loan to you, and you pay back based upon the rate that they set. So there's no other investor. The investor really is the federal government.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen,
Yeah.
for coming up.
Thank you.
We appreciate your willingness to work with us.
I'm just on the camera for a second.
Be back.
And we certainly look forward.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Would you guys
Yes.
do the salary? Yeah, awesome, thank you. And I'll write up that quiz about everything we talked about.
All right, good. All right, so you have a resolution, Mike?
Yes, it's resolution 2017-19. Oh, sorry, -20. Whereas it is an ongoing process to accurately appropriate funds according to the needs of the township, and now therefore the trustees authorize an amendment to the following permanent appropriation, which is the road and bridge fund, which is 2031-330-211 PERS, increased by $7,200, and that's to cover the costs that we incurred by not having our part-time road guy enrolled in PERS. And this will, and there's a couple little, anyway, we'll be all caught up, and penalties and whatever, everything's taken care of with this. This also covered the PERS for the end of the year.
I move for the adoption of resolution 2017-20.
Second that.
Second, any other discussion? See the vote, please.
Mr. Sprackman?
Yes.
Mr. Crockett?
Yes.
Mr. Mutcher?
Yes.
Move we adjourn.
My second. Third.
Thank you. Too painful.